Now, I think
Welcome, Joanna.
And so the echo in this room is lovely. I can barely understand like what you guys are saying.
Dan,
Most of the time.
I know. I keep it that way too.
hi, Rod.
All right.
Hello there,
We thought that was an accident.
Joanna. So can people hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Great, that's a change. So I have with me Bernie Ciccatelli and Jeff Goodrich, and we're joined by a member of the public, Linda Cook. So
Okay.
if my math is correct, that means that we have achieved a quorum already. So you can take over chairing, Jackie.
Thanks, Rod. I appreciate that. And let me just say welcome to Joanna again. Appreciate your coming today. And we'll start out with by approving our agenda, which was you all have a copy of. Do I hear a motion? Thank you,
Oh.
Melissa.
Second. Jeff Goodrich seconds.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Any discussion?
Or comment. Jeff Goodrich has a question or a comment. I'm going to swing the computer to him in an effort to get better audio. Just hang on.
Thank you.
No, that's fine. I just want to express gratitude that a presenter, Joanna, has been put at the front of the agenda. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on the agenda? If not, all in favor, let me ask for a roll call since I can't see everybody. Ernie?
Yes.
Thank you. Jeff Goodrich?
Yes.
Jeff Lubell?
Yes.
Thank you. Melissa?
Yes.
And Brian?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Any public comment? The sound is, I don't hear any sounds, so I think we can move on. Rod, is that your understanding?
Yep.
Okay, great. Then why don't we move on to Johanna? Rod, would you like to introduce Johanna?
Sure. So everybody, I'd like you to welcome Joanna Whitcomb. She's the planner with the Dartmouth College. She is one of the team responsible for the production of the document called Planning for Possibilities, which is the strategic campus framework for Dartmouth. I believe it was originally presented last year and then has been December 2020, no, November 2020, and then it's been re-released effectively in light of COVID and other situations. So Joanna, in a prior life, was part of a small consulting firm called Burnt Rock, and she and her former colleagues are responsible for lots of planning work right across Vermont. So Joanna, take it away.
Thanks, Rod. May I share my screen with those who can see it?
Let me just see if I can organize that.
Okay. So thank you for having me. Before, I think it was the select board about 18 months ago. Actually, it might still kind of a blur. It was probably more than 18 months ago.
Yeah.
So to talk about the plan and the planning work, it was just we were at the beginning of the work. And so what I thought I would do is use my 30 minutes to present the plan or the framework that we've developed, and there are hard copies available online, and there are hard copies that I'm happy to bring over to Tracy Hall. Those of you who'd like a hard copy, I figured I could. Rod suggested I take a tally at the end.
Great.
So the way,
at least one order, Joanna. So.
Okay.
Well, one.
That's two.
Okay. Well, you don't have to tell me now, because after you hear, you might say, "Oh, I want like 5 copies," or "No, I don't want any."
Good point.
Let's see if I can get this going. So, are you seeing Planning for Possibilities?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to. So I have about 24 images. And I would like you to feel free to interrupt me and ask questions throughout the presentation. Let's see if I can move my arrow key here. Okay. So this is the agenda, just talking about how the framework came about. Figured I would start, like all good planners, where we were, where we are today, and where we're going. I talk about the goals of the work that we did, the engagement process, the impact of the pandemic, then dive more deeply into kind of the principles and how we've set up this document. Thought I would hit on a couple of hot topics. Housing, you've probably read about of late, and everyone is interested in the golf course, so I put those out there, but you may have other interests, so feel free. So that's the framework. I have also a couple dozen slides of all the capital projects that are going on campus that I could share with you if we have time and if there's interest. So that's the setup. Anyone have any questions about that agenda?
It looks good.
Okay. So this is a slide, one of my favorites, that was developed a number of years ago. The planning work that we did over the past couple of years with a consulting firm, Beyer Blinder Bell, out of New York City. They're very familiar with our campus. We've worked with them for over 10 years. And a number of years ago, they put together this evolution of the campus. And I like to start with this just as much for, I think it's a good graphic. If you look at the upper left-hand corner, this is back in the early days of Dartmouth. The green is Dartmouth's property. It's about a 7-acre parcel. The college was on Hope the Hill. These are the white iconic brick buildings that you're familiar with now. And the town grew up kind of off these, the roads. This is Wheelock Street taking us to Norwich. So this lighter gray area are where we have community buildings and downtown. After our first phase, big growth phase in the early 1900s, you see all these orange buildings, Dartmouth buildings. We boldly put, those of you who remember, the Mary Hitchcock Memorial Hospital was at the north end of the campus. That there was an affiliation with Dartmouth, but that was independent of Dartmouth, but another important institution that helped shape the growth of Hanover. You see how the town has expanded to the west and to the east, new development over in the Balch area and all around Ockham Pond. You see the gym is there. Baker is not there yet. Baker was built in 1928, Baker Library. So that's kind of the first phase of growth. So the town of Hanover, Dartmouth is 1969. The town of Hanover, I think, is not 1969, 1769, 69. And the town of Hanover was 11 years older than the college. So the town of Hanover and Dartmouth they have grown up together. And you can see in the mid-50s, the expansion, lots of development going off to the east, and the town is taking shape, if you will. The hospital is about 500,000 gross square feet at the north end of campus. Approximately today, Dartmouth's campus is all of this orange. Dartmouth owns all of this orange land. You can see Lewiston here in Norwich, the Montshire parcel just to the west of east of the interstate and west of Montshire is kind of its Norwich holdings. And then you see the rest, a bunch of property in Lebanon and here in Hanover. Any questions on that? This is weird formatting. So going back to 2018, the senior leadership, President Hanlon, our provost at the time, and our executive vice president, Rick Mills, with the support of the board of trustees, said we need to really look to the future and start thinking, or look to the next 30 years of what are our physical assets going to be? What are we doing in terms of development on the campus to support our mission? The goals of the work were really to engage with more than senior leadership, engage with students, faculty, staff, alumni, community members. And so that was one of our goals. The other goal was really to start talking about things and creating a common language. When we talk about the west end of campus, where is the west end? Where's the organic farm? Just starting to talk about places and things, creating a common vocabulary, coming up with, if you will, a menu or a catalog of options from which to choose development opportunities and preservation opportunities, all within this framework. And we'll get to what the framework looks like, but really for the first time bringing all of Dartmouth's resources or holdings together and looking at them as a whole. And that includes the campus, if you will, at the northernmost corner of the state at the Second College Grant, which is 27,000 acres. The Mooselock campus, if you will, which is another 4,600 acres. and a very important campus. And then within the Upper Valley, land holdings, which are fairly extensive in Hanover and the city of Lebanon, the college owns about 3,000 acres. There's land in Norwich, there's a small, there's a forest in Corinth. So really looking at the whole enchilada, if you will. Lots of engagement. Even had a very fun game of Monopoly, playing with poker chips with students and graduate students. The way we enticed the graduate students to join us was, I think it was happy hour and a half, and we had a few of those where we get them really talking about, what they need as an important stakeholder on the campus, undergrads. This is in Alumni Hall where we had poster sessions, Bakerberry. So we really tried to, over the course of the initial 9 months, it was the college's 250th anniversary, and we had events on the green and really tried to get people talking about the future of the campus. And this just gives you kind of the details. Lots of committees. An executive committee, an advisory committee, and working groups. So those met like on a monthly basis, or more often sometimes. So just in terms of timing, we kicked this off publicly in March of 2019. It was supposed to be a 9-month process. We realized that wasn't quite enough time to get to do all the work that we needed to do. We extended it, we were ready to go. Had a final draft in March of 2020, and then we stopped. We were going for the Board of Trustees approval in June of 2020. It really kind of a sentinel moment of celebration with graduation and a new campus framework plan, and then we didn't. We put it on hold as we navigated the pandemic, spent most of the summer reevaluating the work that we had done. A lot of the work, so I said that we used these planners and architects from New York City, Beyer Wunderbaugh. We also had landscape architect, Michael Van Valkenburg Associates. We had transportation experts in Buckhurst, BFI out of New York. We also had 2 sustainability firms that worked with us, Atelier 10 and Borough Happold. So we regrouped and said, wait a minute, did we plan as resilient as we should be planning? Is there enough flexibility within this framework to accommodate, pandemics? We had anticipated intense storms and rain events and how to manage stormwater and transportation, the whole socially distancing, flexibility within our classrooms and residence halls. That was something that we tweaked in our plan to better reflect kind of our needs as a result of the pandemic. So we produced, the Board of Trustees adopted the plan in November of 2020. So just shy of a year. We have this 60, much like your plan, you've got like a 65-page document, and then you have all your appendices. So we have this public booklet, and then we have this toolbox that's about, it's a pretty daunting toolbox. It's about 500 pages with about 8 different chapters or sections, as well as a whole library of GIS and another library of Excel files that are kind of, our go-to, how we're dealing with stormwater here, how we're going to deal with parking in this sector. So that's our toolbox. Throughout the engagement process, really working closely with our committees, what are our principles, our guidance, as we look to redevelop and grow in the future. It's really all about the academic and research mission. You know, we're here for students and faculty. So the job in our physical plant is to support that. We have a mathematician as a president. He's really all about efficiency and optimization and utilization of what our resources as they exist, and making sure that we're really being wise about their use and how we use them. As I mentioned earlier, flexibility is really important, not only to deal with storms and unanticipated events like pandemics, but also to be able to embrace new teaching and research paradigms. Spent a lot of time talking about the well-being of students, not only students, but our faculty and staff, and making sure that we're including everyone and treating people equitably and dealing with accessibility, which is challenging on a 250-year-old campus. Not only dealing with making sure we're inclusive, since next year will be our 50th anniversary with women. We have work to be done, but we also want to preserve what's great about the campus. So preservation and ensuring the character is not lost, and that we're really focusing more effort on our landscapes, making sure that we're doing whatever we're doing is sustainably, and resilience is a component. For the first time in our planning work, really talking about making sure our downtown is vibrant, because a healthy downtown is a healthy campus, healthy downtown. And really knowing that we are an entity in the Upper Valley, that we have employees and our students live in Norwich, they live in Hartford, they commute from Thetford and Bradford, and that we need to do our fair share in terms of being a good neighbor. So this is how we looked at the campus, really roughly 7-mile spine from our southernmost outpost at DHMC in Centerra. We have roughly 400 employees out there and a couple hundred students. Half of our medical school is out there. 3rd and 4th year students do their clinical work out there. And we've invested in housing. There's actually a graduate student housing complex going up right now, hopefully opening within a year. So along the 7-mile spine going up 120, the shaded green are Dartmouth land holdings. And then you hit the southeast corner of the campus, really our athletic complex, but the core of the traditional campus here in Hanover, going north through the golf course. This is along Route 10 Lime Road, practice fields, rugby field, our childcare centers out here, the former Rivercrest development, and then kind of the organic farm, which is kind of the 7-mile mark, if you will, at the northern end of Route 10. So we started looking at these areas as nodes, and then subdivided into precincts, so we could dive more deeply into the campus. Oh, and I forgot. I mean, this is a pretty important Sachem Village, graduate student housing out here in West Love. So if you can't be bothered with reading 65 pages, these are the 2 most important ones in the framework. This gets into kind of gives you a snapshot of the core of our campus, the downtown Hanover, and the 7-mile strip that I talked about. A little bit in Lewiston. I love that we have a national park that runs through our towns. Important that the AT is indicated here. Our waterfront. But this shows you kind of the areas that we looked at, and we looked at every single parcel that's owned by Dartmouth and its adjacencies during the planning process, and actually found some that our real estate office didn't even know we had. The town tax office did, but it was a very interesting process. This is the core campus here on the right. And I think what's important here is it's showing these hashed orange stripes are Dartmouth's land holdings, and we've identified some of these land holdings have buildings on them, some of them have parking lots on them. This is opportunities for redevelopment or new development, as the key indicates. Green is areas where we see important green space and protection or preservation. The darker yellow are key pedestrian links.
Joanna, this is Jeff Lubell here.
Hi, Jeff.
Hey, how you doing? Are you showing, is Lewiston one of the areas that's being marked as an opportunity site?
Yes.
And can you say what your plans are for that area?
We don't have any plans. We think that because there's a lot of parking there, that there could be something built there. We've been, in your planning process, had conversations with Rod and others about, what could happen there. And we're very much looking at that piece of land. Historically it was resident and commercial, and I believe there's some industry. I mean, there's obviously the train station there, or the train station was there and trains running through there. We'd love to work with the town if they think that there's an opportunity for some kind of development. It's not a very big piece of land. I think it's maybe 7 acres, if that. We have had students do all kinds of concept designs in the architecture program, coming up with things with mixed use housing. There was a climbing wall suggested, coffee shop, but we don't have any specific plans as an institution. We just see that there's opportunity there.
Yeah. I can only speak for myself and not for everyone else, but I would certainly be interested in talking further with you about what might be able to be done there. Seems like there aren't a lot of opportunities for development in Norwich, and that could be potentially one that could be helpful.
We had talked in the early stages of your updating of your town plan. It's zone, I'm pretty sure it's zone residential now, like low density res or rural res or something like that. We had talked about an opportunity of looking at that as a mixed use development area.
Mhm.
I'm not sure that came out in your plan. I did review it the other day. I wasn't sure if it's such a small sliver. I couldn't really tell in looking at your maps, but
Yeah,
we'd love to work with you guys.
great.
Yeah, Joanna, we have zoning exercise ahead of us right now over the next many months. So that's definitely in the mix.
And would be happy to sit down with you and be a partner.
Good.
Zoning changes, our experience is it's better for us to work with residents than come to the residents and say, this is what we want to do, because,
Understood.
we're happy to work with neighbors and see what makes sense.
Understood.
So this is kind of, the snapshot plan. Then we dove more deeply in different sectors of the campus, of the core campus. This is an image of the historic core. It's coded, we've numbered, opportunities at the green. There's a whole contingent of students who are like, could you plant some trees? It's too hot in the summer, so all kinds of ideas. came out of our engagement process. We, stuck to there's opportunities to improve the green. We didn't say plant a forest, but we said, hey, let's look at the opportunities here. And so what you'll find in the document online, as well as, it's the same thing in terms of the hard copy, these one-page summaries of what we think should happen within these precincts. So those of you who know the campus well, we did, before we started the huge developments out at the West End, we did a West End precinct plan. And we developed this concept from green to blue, creating from the center of the green a path and a bridge over the cemetery to connect to the West End. This is a better picture. From the heart of the green, a bridge over the cemetery, landing you right in the new development here and connecting to the river. There's so much potential here on the river to do a better job. Right now, it's the back alley of the campus, and not because it isn't beautiful, but it's because we've got 200 cars parked down there. And so, this is kind of an image. I put this in here because it's where we've spent a fair amount of time and see, right now there's a lot of development going on down here. Hot topics. So you can dive more deeply into the different precincts, and it talks about, opportunities within here and other opportunities throughout the core campus. Now I thought I'd just jump into housing and kind of our land holdings. Is that okay with you? And then I'll stop talking.
Sounds good.
So housing has been a topic for quite a while. It's a perfect storm this fall. You've probably read about it in the Valley News or Daybreak or wherever you get your news. We have a combination of a big incoming first-year class. We have students who are desperate to be back on campus and are now back on campus because they've been away for so long. Our off-campus programs in Europe and Mexico, and basically our language programs and our other OSPs or LSPs, I guess, are not happening this fall. So the combination has put a real stress on housing. Happy to report that all those on the waiting list do have beds now. But for many years, we've been looking at opportunities for not increasing undergrad housing, but finding beds that we could use for swing space so we could begin renewing our old outdated residence halls. And so this is a fairly extensive look at the campus as to where there's opportunities. The yellow hashed areas are for undergrads, the blue we see as faculty, staff, and grad housing. Some of which exists, the solid stuff exists, the hashed areas are opportunities. This is some of the work that we've done recently. Those of you who know the Choates are up here. There are these 50 cinder block dorms that really need some love. We've developed a renovation plan, expansion here. We've also looked at the corner of Wheelock and Crosby Street as an opportunity for a new residence hall. We'll see if that goes anywhere. Are you hearing some background noise?
Yes.
Okay, hang on just a second.
Mhm.
Sorry about that. I've got people upstairs watching the Norwich bookstore talk or something, I don't know. So we are looking at housing in not only the shorter term in terms of undergrad, but longer term, trying to provide more graduate housing and more faculty and staff housing to better meet the needs, and ideally within walking distance or at least on transit, so we can reduce vehicular traffic. And we will be working, the town of Hanover kicks off their master planning work at the end of the month, their sustainability master plan. And we'll be working with them closely to look at opportunities for, I think quite honestly, as you look at this area in particular, walkable, an opportunity for higher density. Are there other opportunities downtown where we should be going up instead of out? So we'll be working with them and talking with them in terms of opportunities there. And this is just over in West on Lebanon Street, the Visual Arts Building here on your right, looking at opportunities of Sergeant Block redevelopment in the future. The lodge it was a motor lodge when I was growing up. It now is a residence hall, and it's time for new life, I think, new things to happen there, we hope. There's a lot of encumbrances on that block, so it's going to take a while. But it is definitely in the near future, I think. Then looking at land holdings, this is work that we've done over time, looking at what are the opportunities on the golf course. Golf course has always been seen as a land bank, as a college land bank. And when the Institute, after the pandemic last year, they shut it down in the last spring, and it is now cross-country skiing and cross-country running and walking trails. At some future time, I think there's opportunity for development there. The thinking is this is Pine Park, which is a private land trust holding, where most of the trees are. This would probably, this would remain kind of an arboretum or disc golf or, just kind of undeveloped land. And probably in the future, this would become developed adjacent to the Lime Road neighborhood and more proximate to the campus. So that gives you a sense of, I think it gives you a sense of what we're doing. I didn't go into gory details, but it gives you kind of a big picture overview of where we're at. Hopefully that was 30 minutes.
Yeah, you did well. You did well. Maybe we'll put it back to the group view again.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, there we are. Great. Good. That was quite informative, Joanna, and has piqued my interest even more. Brian, you have a question?
Yeah. Excuse me. Thank you, Joanna, for joining us. Really great
Welcome.
to hear. Two housing related questions, and they both speak to your role and planning's role within the college's larger decision making and influence on the surrounding areas. And the first has to do with the incentives to students to seek rental housing off campus. Is that something that you are involved in? Because I know some of us have questions about how that might impact the availability of rental housing in the area. And the second question is, our governor here vetoed the rental registry that would have been required. Now, Dartmouth students' use of rental property in Norwich, which you mentioned, is an issue relevant to the Planning Commission, not just for resident safety and building quality, but also for those same potential impacts on the housing supply and the availability of affordable rental housing. Would you be the right person, and would the college be willing to work with us to better understand college housing usage within Norwich among students, we'd love to better understand those dynamics, which are, really not public in any way right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm probably the person who knows most about kind of the different components of housing, whether it's undergrad or grad or faculty housing. But I don't know, I can find out from our residential operations and our residential life team where students, where their home addresses are, which is something that they can get. I think we can, in a normal year, about 10% of our student body lives off campus because they're older students, they don't want to live in dorms. They're, the outing club kids who live at the Rock over in the West End. There are these properties that have always been student housing that, West Wheelock is a classic example. Dartmouth doesn't own any of those. They're living off campus. They're not in the meal plan. This year, that 10% has gone up a bit, but it's still less than 15%. But we know that even that little bit of margin impacts affordable housing and availability of housing for our employees, and we know that is a huge factor. And so that's why we're trying to deal with the undergrad housing. The $5,000 incentive wasn't to, my understanding, and that did not come from, that came from the provost office. My understanding was that was to encourage students not to be on campus, like not to supplement. It was like, go and do research, stay at home and do research, go to New York and live and do your internship this fall instead of when you wanted to do it in the winter. I mean, we see with the quarter systems, we see ebbs and flow in the housing demand. Fall and spring are high demand. I mean, who doesn't want to be here in the fall? Winter, the numbers diminish. So we'll have, less students living here in the winter because they will be off that term. I don't know, did that answer your questions, Brian?
A little bit on the first one, and yeah, I'd appreciate any. I mean, obviously we can't get too much into it now, but yeah, I'd appreciate any more we could do together on better understanding where students live and what the impact is on the rental market. Because I love students. I once was one, but they're basically the least in need in terms of ability to pay in the rental market. And so when you give them $5,000 more dollars, is that squeezing other folks even more so? And something that we'd like to understand, but also genuine interest in the safety issues. We don't know which properties are used for student housing as opposed to Airbnb, as opposed to second homes.
Right.
We'd love to know if there are real issues of quality and maintenance that might be of concern to the town.
And I do know that it's something the town of Hanover is struggling with in terms of their rental ordinance and trying to, they have a provision, not more than 3 unrelated people living together. And how do you enforce that? And it's really about safety as well as maintaining neighborhood.
Yeah, you would at least have a fire inspection, right? If it's on the registry. We don't have that.
Right.
It's good. I have a
Thank you.
question. Let me ask the others. Melissa, Jeff LaBelle, any questions? Well, you're on mute, Jeff. Yep.
Why don't you go ahead, Jackie? I can go after you.
Okay, and then I want to get to the people in the room too. So 2 questions. Joanna, you mentioned 10% live off campus in a normal year. Is that like a goal that you have to hit that number? It seems like a low number to me for a campus.
So, Dartmouth is a residential as an undergrad, we're a residential campus, and we
Right.
found over time that 10% of students prefer to live off, 90% are on campus. So
And so
that's our
that's-
target.
Okay, yeah, that's a chart. And is that the undergrad number or overall?
That's the undergrad number. And I
Okay.
think that, I think one of the challenges,
Right.
that we have is that in the course of the past decade or so, our graduate student population has doubled.
Right.
And I think that's really,
So that's where-
Brian, to your point of who's driving this crazy housing market. There's a lot of drivers.
Mhm.
Graduate students are one, second homeowners, Airbnb, kind of COVID. We've got a lot of things playing in the Upper Valley, and oh yeah, this is an amazing place to live. So we've got
Okay.
a lot of things. So, and that's kind of a handshake agreement we have with the town as well, Jackie,
Mhm.
that 10% will live off.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, thank you. And then lastly, you mentioned part of the plan is to enhance the vibrancy of downtown Hanover. We have a similar objective here in our plan in Norwich. I'm interested, what do you see as the key techniques? What is that going to take for you to get that done in Hanover? And maybe we could borrow some ideas.
We've been working with the town, during COVID, the whole concept of,
Mhm.
opening up our streets and getting rid of some of the parking on the Cork through Main Street to help it's giving more square footage to our restaurants to make them,
Okay.
to have more square footage to
Okay.
deal with COVID, but now that's less of it's still an issue, but it's not as big of an issue. But they're gaining tables, they're gaining square feet, thus, and we've also seen rents drop a bit. I think that we're in the middle, the town of Hanover is in the middle of a revaluation. So it's going to be an interesting time in terms of the
Mhm.
rental, the costs for retail space and restaurant space is really, really high. Dartmouth owns a number of downtown properties and
Mhm.
has kind of the institutional commitment to trying to keep those first floors, retail more vibrant space.
Okay.
So part of it is ownership, part of it is working with the Upper Valley Business Alliance and with the town. Hanover Improvement Society, trying to make sure, for a while there, our storefronts were pretty empty.
Yeah.
We still have a couple of empty places. But we don't have a magic bullet, to be fair.
Thanks. Anybody in the room that wants to ask a question? Ron?
Jeff Goodrich has a question.
Okay.
Yeah, a couple things. Joanna and I sort of grew up together, Hanover High classmates. I just want to note that she is a Hanover Select Board member, so she's really tuned in other ways. Her father, John, was a wonderful mentor for me. We are members of the Hanover Improvement Society, and I'll issue some other disclosures later, but I just want to let you know how well connected Joanna is in the local.
I'm not sure that's something, we should be dancing at. Sometimes I wonder. Jeff,
Jeff
I
Liddell.
can see Jeff.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to acknowledge, the housing that you guys are working on, I think in collaboration with the hospital, really important, really glad to see that, really important, I think. Both the hospital and the college both share an interest in having their employees be able to afford housing, and housing keeps going up and up and up. And so in that regard, I'm curious about whether you all have numeric targets for the number of units that you're really trying to create over the next, X number of years, and also whether you've analyzed whether the development of housing by the college has kept pace with the increase in your graduate school enrollment and the increase in your faculty. And I would ask the same question of the hospital, right? To the extent that you all are sort of growing, are you building enough housing units to keep pace with that demand, or, and of course, there's even from that, there's going to be spillover retail demand, et cetera,
Right.
So do you have targets and have you done that analysis? If so, I'd love to see the data to just really understand better, just kind of what's driving the market here, because, it just, prices just keep, forget the COVID stuff. Hopefully that will play it, that'll settle down. But even
Right.
before COVID, I mean, things, vacancy
Yeah.
rates were close to zero, right?
Right. We do not have numeric targets yet. We are working towards that. We have the 401 month support is 604 beds for graduate students. We have roughly 540 units in our portfolio, and most of those are at Sachem Village. So that's a good hunk of beds, predominantly for graduate students. There are, some staff and faculty, and those will be in those units, but they're like after the grads students get it. Our downtown portfolio with, kind of over on South Street where Ramunto's is, there's a bunch of housing there. There's a bunch of housing also over on Park Street. And we have all of those numbers. And we've identified, Rivercrest is a future development site. Was it 2008, 2012, maybe? I think it was 2008. What was the crash? 2008. There were supposed to be 300 units built there. And that went south. And then we have the Krell TCE problems there. So there's a little anxiety as to doing, putting housing there just yet until that site is fully taken care of. So your questions, do we have numeric targets? No. Do we have, right now, do we have beds? Could we identify the number of beds that we have to accommodate the growth in graduate students? Yes. Our undergraduate population has stayed relatively flat. So in terms of increase in beds, that, we've brought some, I would say probably 100 new units of undergraduate beds on in the past decade. And they've been in the form of, small houses, not residence halls, triangle house, sororities, but that's it for undergrad. But during that time, we haven't really grown that population in any shape.
Okay. Joanne, I just want to thank you again. And you asked at the beginning if anybody would like a hard copy. I still would. And we had one in the room. Is there anyone else who would like a hard copy? And Melissa would like one too. Okay, great. So I think that's 3.
We have an order for 4. 2 in the room and 3 otherwise.
I'll bring it. I'll drop off a half dozen.
Yeah.
Are the offices open in general during the day? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And in terms of housing, I think it's a really important subject, and I'm happy to. I know that I am going to be serving on the master plan committee in the town of Hanover when that kicks off at this month. I'd be happy to participate if you'd like me to, or one of my colleagues in your zoning efforts. And I know you have an affordable housing group, so if you, we're happy to participate and feel, we should be, if you want us there, to be at the table.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
You're welcome.
All right.
Thanks. Have a good meeting. I'll see you later.
Bye-bye. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Life is good. Okay, moving on to announcements, reports, updates, and correspondence. Rod, do you want to talk to us just your perspective from your office, what the latest is?
You mean with regard to the correspondence and things, or do you mean just in a sort of a director's up?
Just, director's update.
Okay, so things are busy, mostly not planning, mostly town managing or pretending to be a town manager, acting town manager. I'm not sure exactly what the title is. And that is proving to be time consuming and challenging. So the RFP for the density study is out and posted. The RFQ for that is out and posted. The RFQ for the wastewater study is with the state for their final review, so that we can be sure that we will be eligible for their funding source. I had a very cryptic response late yesterday from Tom Brown, the manager of that unit, saying that it looked good, but I didn't get a kind of confirmation that it was good enough. So I'm just sort of trying to press him on a few details, like, well, so does that mean that we can start spending your money, is basically what I asked him. So he would really focus on what I was asking for. So that's what we've got going. The due dates for both those projects will be, we'll be hopefully able to go under contract for both of them in the early November timeframe, late October, early November. And so I would hope that that will take us through the winter months in terms of kind of long-term background work that we need to do for the zoning review. I can't give you any kind of clear guarantee today about when I would return to being just a planning director and zoning administrator. The development stuff, the zoning administrator work, I guess, and the work of the DRB has trailed off, I think, in anticipation of winter. So most of the designs and permits have been issued. So, but there may be a little late burst. So it's hard to say. I think that we should take it more or less month by month. We are expecting the DRB to visit at the next meeting in October. There'll be some preparation involved in that, both for me and the DRB. And I hope that the Planning Commission will also take the time to read both the zoning and subdivision regulations and get a sense of what those documents, do or set out to do. And then we can have a discussion with the DRB in October. I should alert you that there's been some turnover in the DRB. So in fact, having gone from a membership where the average length of service was well over 20 years, we're now in a situation where 3 or 4 people have probably got at least a decade of experience, but we've got 3 people with less than 4 years experience, and 2 of those have less than 2 months experience. So there'll be a bit more variety, but I hope that their background, their life backgrounds will help them ask perceptive questions. And so it'll be a learning experience for them and for the Planning Commission. So I think we're on target in terms of our workload in the short term. And the longer term stuff is good. The medium term, I'm a little less clear about.
Great. Thanks, Ron. And then the other item we should talk about is the correspondence.
You want me to run through that? So you see that Troy delivered, as promised, an environmental review for the solar project that's proposed for Upper Loveland Road, which did involve some minor adjustments to the scope of the project, I guess, in terms of where the actual panels would be located. So they do have to avoid a few things. And he was able to confirm that that wouldn't have an impact on the visual analysis, which would be the question for this body. So that's fine. And then in a different piece of correspondence, we have a resident from Union Village Road who has written to complain about a neighbor having a solar panel installation, which she believes impacts her view. And I have done a drive-by of the installation, can confirm that it's more than 20 feet back from the edge of the right-of-way, and as far as I can judge, meets all the requirements as spelled out in the Public Utility Commission application. And as you know, because we've been through this before, I don't have the authority as a zoning administrator to review the project, and the Planning Commission doesn't have authority to review the project. So the project, if it was to be challenged or investigated further, it would have to be through the mechanisms established by the Public Utility Commission. And at this point, for a project of that size, I'm not aware that they have any. So that's been communicated. That's been communicated in multiple different ways at different times to the author of the letter.
Okay. Thanks, Rod. Any questions for Rod before we move on to the other items under number 4, agenda item number?
Jeff Goodrich has a question.
Okay, there you go.
A comment. I don't have the Arrowwood environmental report that goes along with whatever Troy did, but I can attest to Arrowwood's quality work. If Dory Barton did it herself, I'm confident it's good work. I would note that technically speaking, it does need the district ecologist's affirmation of classification for the wetland. But to the extent Troy and his team are responding to whatever Arrowwood has presented, I think that's a positive thing.
Thanks, Jeff. Anybody else? Okay.
There's nothing here.
Okay, all right. And then moving on, you've all gotten copies of the Affordable Housing Subcommittee minutes. Thank you, Brian and Jeff Lubell, for all of your work on that. And the Child Care Committee minutes. Thank you, Brian, for your work on that. And the Article 36 Task Force minutes. Thank you, Ernie, for your work on that. So if you have any questions for those folks, if you haven't already asked them in other forums, please speak up. You all set? All set in the room? Okay, great. All right, then we're ready for number 5. Brian, are you still with us? I think you had to step out. There he goes. Okay,
Yeah.
here it comes.
I just had to switch rooms.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, so this next agenda item is revisiting the discussion from our last meeting on proposed revisions to our own bylaws. And as we discussed during that meeting, our current bylaws say we need a second round, essentially.
Can everybody in the room hear, Brian? You can hear, okay? Okay, good. I'm having a little trouble. Go ahead. Maybe I just need to turn up my volume. I'll just turn up my volume. I got it. Okay, thanks.
A second round of review before we can adopt any changes. So what you have before you in the packet is the general motivations as discussed last time, and I've incorporated the feedback that you guys shared last time around, at least as best as I understood it. And so we have some minor but important proposed revisions here, and we discussed last time, although not in depth, also the possibility of adopting the select board's guiding principles, which is not in this packet, but it was in prior packet. And so I can just quickly go through the new version of the text in the red line version, if that's helpful, so you guys can understand how I heard your feedback and how it's reflected in these changes. And, you know, if anybody feels comfortable making a motion to adopt these changes, so be it, or perhaps you guys feel like, you know, now's not the time to go for it. But you know, I'm kind of ambivalent on that. But the point is, this second review was required, and so I'll just touch on each new point. So if you look, if you have the packet up in front of you, page 2 of the bylaws, there's Roman numeral 3, subsection 3 there, at the top of page 2. Here is where we clarify who can speak on behalf of the Planning Commission. Who can speak on behalf of the Planning Commission or deliberations and actions and decisions. And so here it's just clear that it can essentially be anyone, but that we need to make an affirmative. The point is that we would need to make an affirmative action to make that happen, as opposed to you know, somebody in their elected role just, you know, making that decision on their own. And then the next point is at the bottom of that same page, then section Roman numeral 4, subsection 3 down there is where we clarify a bit on the process for agenda setting. And here there was some confusion about what the word draft meant. So I think we've just cleaned it up a bit here. So it's clear that that what's being sent out is wait a minute. What I'm seeing in the packet that I have,
Looks like the last version from last month.
it does.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Yeah, the first change, yeah, it's possible the wrong version went out. I was looking at the version that I have on my computer, but now I'm pulling up the packet, and I'm sorry, there's been a confusion. This is the wrong version.
Let me just clarify. This was the version that was included in an email between you and Jackie, and it was the.
This is the version from
yeah.
last.
That was the one that I selected. So I apologize if there's been some mix-up, but
That's okay. That's okay. So we can revisit this next time because we can't act anyway. So
right.
next month's agenda. Sorry about that.
So it was the one I extracted from an email communication between you and Jackie and me on going forward. So
I think the only difference,
No,
Yep.
I'll resend the
Okay.
rate file, and sorry about that. This is
Yep.
Can I make a suggestion?
yes, go ahead.
Going back to the one that's in the paragraph 3. I don't know if you fixed this problem, but yeah, and you may have addressed what I'm about to talk about. But it says, as needed, the voting members may present may designate the chair,
The
etc.
text has been changed. I wouldn't even worry about talking through it now. It's
All right.
changed.
I have to say that if
Subtle but important ways to reflect the feedback, and we can talk about it next month. Sorry about that.
So yeah, I'm sorry for the confusion. That's where I drew the document from. So maybe, Brian, what you can do is make sure that you just send me in an email the right version, and then I'll make sure that gets in the packet next time around. I apologize for any inconvenience.
There you go.
Okay. No worries,
Don't worry about it.
no worries. Track changes will be the death of us all. It's one of the most confusing functions.
No, it's okay. It's better than.
Okay.
Google Docs is instant death.
Okay, let's move on to number 6, with approving the August 10th minutes. Do I hear a motion? Thanks, Melissa. Do I hear a second?
Jeff Goodrich seconds.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion about the August 13th minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
aye. Do we have 2 ayes in the room?
Yes, I believe
Thank you.
we had 6-0.
Okay, all right, very good. Thank you very much. Topic number 7 here, any other business, anything we didn't talk about that we should have? Okay. And last but not least, our future meeting schedule and the agenda, as Rod has already discussed, for our October 12th meeting. We have a discussion with the DRB. Oh, wait, I see a hand. I see
This is Annie.
Yeah, I just read the last page of the, this is not an objection to the minutes, but it says updates from Point People and Chickatelli Energy. And we had this kind of discussion, and I talked about it with Rod, because we discussed I was on the Article 36 committee, which it calls itself basically the Article 36 Task Force, not the Energy Committee. We also have an Energy Committee. Either one of both of which are of interest to me. But at one point, we did discuss briefly that I just heard sort of like flying past me, Ernie's on the energy too, so as well as tax.
No, I think we all understand you're on the Article 36 committee.
If
That's
you
okay.
wanted to appoint me to the Energy Committee, that's fine too, but
I'll make sure it's Article 36 next time.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll be clear. We'll be clear. That's good call out. Thank you. So yeah, and what we had said last time is at a future meeting, it would be good to hear from our various representatives from these committees, and we should do that. But there won't be time for that in October for sure, because we really want to, focus our time on the DRB, and then I guess the other topic would be we'll have the bylaws in front of us, and we should be in position to.
So
Yes.
Jackie, also, I can't say for sure what will happen at next week's Affordable Housing Subcommittee meeting, but we will be reviewing a memo to the Planning Commission, and if we choose to approve it, that would be something that would be nice to talk about at a meeting relatively soon.
Okay. So remember, yes, thank you, Jeff, for that reminder. Okay. And it.
Yeah, Jeff Goodrich has one other item.
Yeah, so I just want to mention again that Phil Deckert was keeping a log of the DRB concerns about our zoning stuff, and he published what I thought was a fantastic list. Please, a starting point, so if we can republish that as a sort of a baseline to go forward, that would be helpful.
When you say published, do you know?
I could probably find it in my records, but basically he took, the DRB had a number of concerns that he published, and we had this list with the Planning Commission before we went into the town plan cycle about zoning considerations.
Why don't we do this, Jeff Goodrich? I'll look for it. You can look for it, and maybe Pam can look for it. So maybe, and if we can, if none of us can find it, we'll let. Then maybe Rod will have some ideas. I'm just trying to take something off. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
So we'll look for it. I think I might have a copy, maybe. I'm not sure, but I'll look. Okay.
Okay.
And if we can find it, we'll let you know. That's great. All right. And then, so yeah, that's a good thing. I guess a question for the group. Would it be useful if Brian finds the bylaws with the corrections that he last made? I'm sure he will find those instantly. Could we just send that out to the group so you have time to consider it? Let's do that, okay? So it doesn't get lost in the sauce and we all have the right copy. So Brian, if you would just forward the right copy to everyone. Would that be okay?
I just, I sent them just
You've already done it?
now to you and Rod, so.
Okay,
If you forward it to everyone, that's fine. And just Jackie, it would be really good for you to emphasize as chair that people can receive, but that's it.
yeah, right, okay.
Like no decision making or just, action between now and the next meeting, but I'm sure people
I
understand. But
I think,
yeah.
I understand. Under the same, by the same token, would it be useful if we can find this Phil Deckert list? If we also distributed that in advance, would that be useful? Would that,
if we can dig it up, I mean, I don't know.
right,
I know Pam's out this week, I'm not sure I'm going to find anything easily.
no, we're not trying to put anything on you,
Oh,
Ron.
yeah. But if you and Jeff dig through your archives, that'd be great.
If we can find it, we'll send it out, okay? We're trying to take work off your plate, okay?
I should say, I guess that I'm imagining that it's good to know where the DRB is coming from, and many of the members of the DRB will be able to remember where they're coming from. I hope.
And you have one former, long-term DRB member on board.
Right, exactly. But I would say that, what we're actually contemplating here is a complete rewrite, including structure. So of course it would be useful to know that we didn't step in the same mess the next time around. But I'm pretty confident that we're going to dodge most of the mess with
I understand.
Right.
It may help people's comprehend, we all have an assignment to read about 170 pages right now, so it may help your comprehension if you have this list from Phil.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, it's a good way to focus you. Yep.
Yeah, focus your energy. Okay.
Okay.
Anything else we need to talk about future meeting schedule and agendas? After October 12th, we've got November 9th, so make sure your calendar is marked. And so let me just move on then to public comment.
There's none.
Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So yes, Jeff Goodrich has moved it.
Okay, do we have a second? Can I see your hand, Ernie? Can you throw your hand in the screen?
Yep. Any seconds? I'll give you.
All right. Thanks for a good meeting, folks. It's really appreciate it. And I guess we got to vote. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye. Brian, are you a yes?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, no worries. Jeff, are you a yes? Jeff Lubell?
Yes.
Okay. I think I heard 2 ayes in the room, so I think we're in good shape. Ron, thanks for all you do. I appreciate it.
Yep, you're welcome. Good night, everyone.